After opening an account at the bank and depositing her first check, Rayhana and her daughter went with the chauffeur to the super mall to purchase clothes and dolls. Rayhana chose 4 beautiful dresses for her daughter and 3 lovely dresses for herself. She selected 3 pairs of shoes for her daughter, 2 for herself, plus some underwear for both. She also chose some beautiful Barbie dolls for her daughter. If it had never seen a doll before, she was altogether joyful when her mother bought them for her. To top off the day, they were escorted to an Indian restaurant, digging into delicious mutton curry and chicken tandoori. While they were going from place to place, the chauffeur kept talking to Rayhana about one certain subject. He was trying to convince her to accept his advice and be a secret mistress or kept wife for Sheikh Ahmed. He said to her in that way she could make more money and secure the future of her daughter. He tried to reason with her that she would be able to buy a house in Bombay with the money she saved and return to India. No matter how much he tried to tempt her with money and future prosperity, Sabir could not convince her to accept his advice. Rayhana firmly stood her ground and simply told him that she would not like to be in a secret affair with a married man who was as old as her grandfather. Eventually Sabir stumbled upon a concrete reason to make her reconsider. Rayhana had confided in him about Sheikh Ahmed's 2 sons. She could not keep inside herself how the boys had secretly recorded her naked in their mother's washroom and how they used it to blackmail her. She told him of how they threatened to show the video saying, show mommy over and over. Sabir advised her to talk to their father. He reasoned that failing to do so would allow the boys to continue in their ways and blackmail her forever. Rayhana rejected this advice for she did not want their father to know what she did in the women's washroom and what his sons had done to her. She did not want Sheikh Ahmed to watch that disgraceful video of her masturbating in the washroom. She thought that the old Saudi man might take advantage of the video and blackmail her too. She did not enjoy the idea that the father might show the video to his wife and it would be even more humiliating for her. Even so, Sabir repeatedly reminded her that she would be blackmailed and raped every night by the 2 sons if she did not complain to their father. When nothing else he said convinced Rayhana, Sabir explained that she would eventually get pregnant by one of the 2 boys, which would end up being a death sentence for her. He narrated to her the sad and alarming story of a Pakistani maidservant who was impregnated by a Saudi boy and was sentenced by the Sharia court to death. Although the maidservant was impregnated by the son of her sponsor, the Saudi family insisted that she was impregnated by someone else. The maidservant was jailed until she delivered her baby inside the prison. Finally, she was stoned to death on a Friday afternoon. This story served its purpose. Rayhana became horrified at the idea she could be stoned to death and her daughter and family would be left alone without her to help provide for them. Sabir told her how she could escape this sad and tragic end. According to his carefully thought-out advice, if Rayhana agreed to be the mistress of Sheikh Ahmed and if she happened to be pregnant, the Sheikh would either send her to India to deliver the baby or bribe a Pakistani or an Egyptian doctor to abort the baby. Sabir knew that Pakistani and Egyptian doctors who worked in the OPEC countries were known for conducting secret abortions. Although abortion was illegal in those countries, for the sake of money, quite a few Pakistani and Egyptian doctors were more than willing to take the risk. They charged dearly in their quest to profit from the illegal impregnation of lowly maidservants. Rayhana gave rise to fear when she remembered that she had missed her period. She concluded that she had already become pregnant. She figured that one of the 2 police officers who had raped her had gotten her pregnant. Who was going to believe her if she said she had been raped? That was tantamount to admitting adultery. Sheikh Ahmed might think the Indian man who kept her in his apartment for the 1 week before he came and took her from the beauty salon had impregnated her. She even remembered that she had married Aslam Ali Khan on paper. Her sponsor might have him arrested and the police might find their marriage certificate in his apartment. How could she convince the court that she just married him on paper in order to stay with him for protection? Finding herself in a dilemma, she then realized she had only 2 options. She could either follow the advice of Sabir and become Sheikh Ahmed's kept wife and safeguarded by him, or face the consequences of her pregnancy. Once again, Rayhana was faced with choosing the lesser of two evils. Since Rayhana travelled without her husband or father to Saudi Arabia, she became the right hands possessed to her kafil. The word kafil in Arabic should not be translated as a sponsor, as many people often mistakenly do. The kafil in its essence means master or owner. It is a leftover term from the system of slavery that was practiced in Saudi Arabia for hundreds of years and still being practiced today behind the closed walls of their society. Until today, slavery system in Islam is taught in the Islamic Al-Azhar Al-Sharif University, at Cairo, Egypt. It is also included in all curriculums of schools, institutes, universities in Muslim countries as well as Muslim schools in Western countries. No Muslim scholar or religious authority can dare to remove it from the Islamic educational system because it is in the Quran and the Prophet Muhammad endorsed and practiced it. The relationship between the kafil and the makful is nothing other than a relationship between the master and slave. The kafil had many rights granted by the law toward his makful. He had the right to kick his makful out of the country anytime he wished. He could send his makful to jail, and if he or she were arrested by the police for any reason, no one could get him or her out of jail except their kafil. If the kafil beat his makful, he would not be sent to prison, and if he killed his makful, he might receive a very light sentence. Although the law did not say it openly, the kafil had the right to sleep with his female makful. There are many recent fatwas issued by high religious authorities equating the maidservants to the right hands possess. The maidservant is considered to be the right hands possess of her kafil. The Quran allows the Muslim man to sleep with whatever number of female slaves who are deemed what your right hands possess. Surat Al-Nisa 3, verse 4 reads, "Marry of the women who seem good to you, 2 or 3 or 4, and if ye fear that ye cannot do justice to so many, then 1 or what your right hands possess." We need to write a large article to help explain the above verse. However, in a nutshell, this verse allows a Muslim man to have 4 wives and hundreds of female slaves, as many as he chooses. Abdul Rahman ibn Auf, one of the preeminent companions of the Prophet Muhammad, had 90 female slaves and he slept with them all without marrying them. Some Muslim clerics issued fatwas allowing the kafils to sleep with their maidservants. Many Indonesian, Filipino, Egyptian, Somali, Indian, and Pakistani maidservants working in Saudi Arabia and Gulf countries complained that their employers had raped them, but all had their lawsuits summarily rejected. Yet, another fatwa issued recently by a prominent Muslim scholar which encouraged unmarried female employees at workplace to breastfeed their male colleagues because it is unlawful for Muslim man and Muslim woman to be together if they are not married or closely related to each other. The fatwa says, women who come into regular contact with men who aren't related to them should give them their breast milk so they will be considered relatives. Fatwa applied to men who live in the same house or come into contact with women on a regular basis, except for drivers. Fatwa by Sheikh Al-Obakan, advisor, Royal Court and consultant, Ministry of Justice, Saudi Arabia. According to this fatwa, for Rayhana Khan to work as a maidservant in her kafil's house, she has to breastfeed Sheikh Faiz bin Ahmed. Somehow, the fatwa exempted the Pakistani chauffeur because he is the family driver. So, Mrs. Ahmed need not to breastfeed Sabir Ibrahim Shah because he is her driver, and shall we add, her secret sex satisfier. Another option, Sheikh Ahmed has to treat Rayhana Khan as his right-hand possession and sleeps with her anytime if he chooses to do so. After the scandalous marriage of the Prophet Muhammad with Zainab bint Jahash, the wife of his adopted son, Zayd, the Quran forbade adoption. The cancellation of adoption created a problem for those families who already had adopted sons and daughters. One woman approached the Prophet and asked his advice regarding a domestic problem she was experiencing at home because of the new teaching of the Quran, Surat Al-Ahzab 33, 5. Let us see how the Prophet solved that problem. Aisha reports that Salah bint Suhail came to the Messenger of Allah, Allah bless him and give him peace, and said, "O Messenger of Allah! I see on the face of Abu Hudhayfa, her husband, signs of dislike, on the entering of Salim, their adopted son, who is an ally, into our house." The Messenger of Allah, Allah bless him and give him peace, said, to her, "Suckle him." She said, "How can I suckle him as he is a grown-up man?" The Messenger of Allah, Allah bless him and give him peace, smiled and said, "I already know that he is a young man." Sahih Muslim. Hadith number 1453. In another hadith, she returned and said, "I have suckled him, and what was there in the heart of Abu Hudhayfa has disappeared." Sahih Muslim. Before we go further and see what was the consequence of that bizarre teaching, one would like to ask how a young woman can breastfeed a grown-up man? Can you imagine a woman opening her breast and allowing a young man to suckle her nipple? Believe it or not, some wives of the Prophet Muhammad applied that teaching in their daily lives after his death. Aisha and Hafsa, wives of the Prophet, would not allow any man to enter to them if he would not be breastfed first by their sisters and nieces. Aisha took that as a precedent for whatever men she wanted to be able to come to see her. She ordered her sister, Kulthum, and the daughters of her brother to suckle to whichever men she wanted to be able to come in to see her. Muwatta Malik, Hadith number 31. Yahya related to me from Malik from Nafi that Safiya bint Abi Ubaid told him that Hafsa sent Asim ibn Abdullah ibn Sad to her sister Fatima bint Umar ibn al-Khattab for her to suckle him 10 times so that he could come in to see her. She did it, so he used to come in to see her. Muwatta Malik, Book 30, Volume 1, Hadith number 8. Such an immoral teaching led recently an Egyptian Muslim sheikh to issue fatwa permitting Muslim women to follow the recommendation of the Prophet Muhammad and breastfeed their male colleagues at workplace. Dr. Izzat Adiyah, who is the head of the Department of Hadith in Al-Azhar University, which is the most prestigious and oldest Islamic institute of learning in the world, issued a fatwa. The fatwa declared that it is legitimate for a working Muslim woman to breastfeed her male colleague to avoid the sin of khulwa, which means a woman staying with a male stranger in one room. Similar fatwas had been issued in the past by many sheikhs in many Middle Eastern countries, but this is the first time it came from a high-level academic of Al-Azhar University. Dr. Izzat Adiyah justified his fatwa by referring to authentic hadiths of the Prophet Muhammad that permitted a Muslim woman to breastfeed her adopted son to make him her son through breastfeeding. In order to justify his scandalous marriage with his daughter-in-law, Prophet Muhammad forbade the noble social institution of adoption and deprived millions of orphaned or illegitimate Muslim children from being adopted by other families. Without this option of adoption, thousands of Muslim girls every year either killed themselves for fear of bringing disgrace to their families or got slain in honor killings by their families when they get impregnated out of the marriage bonds. For instance, in Khartoum, Sudan, every year hundreds of Muslim girls are impregnated through the so-called al-zawaj al-orfi and then delivered their babies and threw them in the garbage containers to be eaten up by stray dogs. Al-zawaj al-orfi is a kind of an Islamic marriage, which is socially unrecognized and unaccepted by Sudanese Muslim families. It is like the Shiite mutta marriage, or enjoyment marriage, where the boy and the girl marry themselves to each other without the knowledge of their families and without mazun or judge, witnesses, and any official document. Sometimes people rescue those misfortunate babies before they die. Many times those poor babies lost some of their limbs, such as a hand or leg, which had been eaten up by stray dogs. The recent increase in the number of those cast-away babies forced the Islamic government of Sudan to open the Dar al-Magama Center to take care of those unwanted babies. However, no one is allowed to adopt one of those children and give them his name because adoption is illegal in Islam. In any case, the moment Rayhana agreed to his suggestion, the Pakistani chauffeur picked up his cell phone and dialed the number of his employer to break the good news. As a matter of fact, Sheikh Ahmed was the one who told Sabir to convince Rayhana about his secret proposal. He promised to give him a hefty reward if he succeeded in convincing his Layla to marry him secretly and become a beloved mistress and his kept wife. The word kept wife brings us to explain again, why Sheikh Ahmed did not legally marry Rayhana. Of course, he would if he could, but the law in Saudi Arabia forbade marriage to non-Saudi women, even if the woman was a Muslim and an Arab. For that reason, Sheikh Ahmed was left with the only workable option of making Rayhana his kept wife. The need to own and possess is implied in the word, wife. Even though it wouldn't be a real marital relationship, it would suffice for the crazy old geezer. Sheikh Ahmed could have easily raped Rayhana as soon as she came under his control and under his roof. After she is counted his right hand possess. Nonetheless, he decided not to resort to coercion regarding this sensitive matter, but decided to use his money to buy her heart as he did before with his first Indian Christian wife, Christy. Sheikh Ahmed could have married Rayhana and put her in a palace in India, but his bitter experience with Christy and her boyfriend Bobby taught him a lesson that he would never ever forget for the rest of his life. He did not want to fall into the same hole again. After Rayhana said Kabul, a really naughty and crazy idea crept into the mind of the old man and he jumped on it. At the time of conducting the marriage contract, any Muslim girl in India would be asked by the religious Mazun to say Kabul, which means she agreed to marry her husband-to-be. This is only in India because it is a secular country and the law requires the girl's consent. In most of the other Muslim countries, the Mazun would not even meet the girl or see her. Her father was the one who was supposed to meet her prospective husband and the Mazun and the father was the one who had to say Kabul. Whether the girl agreed to the marriage or not, that wasn't the Mazun's business. For a Mazun to conduct a lawful marriage and issue the marriage certificate, he needed the signatures of the father, the future husband, and the two witnesses. Most marriages in Muslim countries were conducted in the mosques as if the marriage was between the future husband and the father-in-law. I think Muslims should be given credit for being the first people on earth to come up with the idea of gay marriage. According to the Islamic Sharia law, a woman is utterly incompetent to enter into a marriage contract herself or for anyone else even though her guardian could authorize her to do so. A father can contract the marriage of his virgin daughter without asking her consent whatever her age. Verma 1988, 24. When Rayhana said Kabul to be a kept wife, Sheikh Ahmed all of a sudden changed his mind and decided to marry her properly. But, he wanted to marry her in a very strange way. No human being had ever thought or dreamed of what he was planning to do. If his plan worked, he would be the first to conceive the idea. He wanted to hire a man for Rayhana to marry. It made sense to him as the hired husband would be a husband on paper but she would be all his and his alone. She and her paper husband would live in his house, but no one would touch her except him. In fact, in Islam there is something very close to this crazy plan of his. There is a hired husband in the Sharia law known as the muhalal. The only outstanding difference between Sheikh Ahmed's paper husband and the Sharia law husband, muhalal, was that sex is forbidden for the paper husband and in the latter instance, allowed once. Some Muslim men who divorced their wives 3 times and wanted to have them back would not like their ex-wives and soon-to-be wives fornicating with other men. To play around with this muhalal's business, they would arrange for their wives' safe return by getting their wives married to muhalals on paper for a day and have them divorced the next day. Alas, the Prophet Muhammad said otherwise. In the book of Asbab al-Nuzul, page 46, the Suyuti stated that a woman came to the Prophet Muhammad and told him, Abdul Rahman, the muhalal whom she wed after she was divorced 3 times, has divorced me without having any sexual intercourse with me. May I go back to my ex-husband? Muhammad said to her, no, that is not permissible until Abdul Rahman has sex with you first, then you may go back to Rafa'a. The same case was narrated differently by the beloved wife of the Prophet Muhammad. Aisha said, the woman of Rafa'a al-Karza came to the Prophet Muhammad and told him, Abdul Rahman has divorced me and I was with him like a piece of his cloth, without having any sexual intercourse with me. The Prophet told her you cannot go back to your husband until you taste his honey and Abdul Rahman tastes your honey, Sahih al-Bukhari. In other words, sexual intercourse should be done at least once between the wife of Rafa'a and her muhalal, Abdul Rahman. The muhalal's penis should enter in the wife's vagina and ejaculation must take place therein. Sheikh Ahmed now had to convince his Pakistani chauffeur to marry Rayhana on his behalf, but never ever have sexual intercourse with her. He smiled at his brilliant logic. He did not want Rayhana returning to her country. According to the Islamic Sharia law, a married woman cannot travel to any place without her husband or a muhrim. This restriction was directly from the mouth of the Prophet Muhammad: a woman does not travel except with a muhrim, Sahih al-Bukhari and Sahih Muslim, which is usually a father, brother, son, or grandfather. Thus, the wife is literally tied to her husband or muhrim wherever she goes. Should Rayhana and her paper husband decide to double-cross their employer and flee together to India, Sheikh Ahmed knew that the Indian consulate in Jeddah would never issue a visa to a Pakistani man. It would be easier for a Pakistani terrorist to get a tourist visa to the USA than get permission to visit India for 1 day or even 1 hour. The Indian government was thorough in blacklisting almost every single Pakistani male alive. Secondly, Sheikh Ahmed, like most men in the Third World, abhorred the use of condoms. So, he expected that his kept wife might get pregnant from their first encounter. If so, he would just take her to a Pakistani doctor, bribe in hand, and have the baby aborted. This would, however, expose his sundry indiscretions unnecessarily to all. His way, he reasoned, if a baby should result from the union, the baby would be considered by his family members and Sharia law the child of the paper husband. Thirdly, Sheikh Ahmed wanted to give his Saudi wife peace of mind. He knew from day one, his wife had become restless and worried about the moral integrity of the male members of her family, him included. She had voiced her concern to him, and in this way, she could take comfort in the knowledge that Rayhana was safely married to their Pakistani chauffeur. Ironically, if he only knew what was going on between his righteous wife and his faithful Pakistani pimp, he would not have bothered with her peace of mind. Lastly, Sheikh Ahmed wanted to protect his beloved woman from his teenage sons. He knew that, as long as she was single and sleeping all alone in her room, his sons would be tempted to approach her at night and rape her. His eyes did not lie when he witnessed the boy's first sighting of her. Sheikh Ahmed seemed to have thought of every possible loophole except one. What about the paper husband? How could he trust a young man like Sabir to sleep chastely with his beloved? Both were young and close to each other in age. They spoke the same language and shared the same culture. He mused, perhaps Rayhana would prefer to have sex with a younger man 4 decades his junior. In actual fact, when Rayhana said Kabul, there were only 6 days remaining before the old Saudi man would celebrate his 70th birthday. Sabir had no wife in Saudi Arabia or in Pakistan. Such a beautiful and young woman like Rayhana sleeping by his side every night would be the perfect temptation. It was akin to leaving fresh meat near a hungry dog expecting the meat to remain intact and untouched. A meticulous predator like Sheikh Ahmed would not make such a grave error. It was, in fact, the first loophole he thought of, and so he planned on just how to cover it. Here, he openly exposed his evil and selfish nature. Here also, the old religious practices of the Muslim caliphs, the kings of the Umayyad and Abbasid dynasties, and the Muslim sultans of the Ottoman Empire were resurrected. Sheikh Ahmed justifiably decided to act as a Muslim caliph or sultan and turn his Pakistani chauffeur into a eunuch. He knew that Sabir would rather die than become a castrated man. Wherefore, he decided to castrate him without his knowledge. In his selfish obsession for Rayhana, the lives of many were destroyed that crossed the path of the noble, Sheikh Ahmed. Rayhana's Indian boyfriend, Jamal Khan, went to jail and was eventually sentenced to 15 years in prison. The Sudanese foreign student, Babakir Alawar, was suffering in an Indian jail waiting for trial, which might land him in prison forever, and Muhammad Khan's business was ruined completely and he ended in a mental hospital. That day, when Rayhana returned to the house of the noble family, there were some noticeable changes. She was informed by Mrs. Ahmed that her quarters had been moved from the small storeroom to a big room near the kitchen. She had been given the key to her new room. Mrs. Ahmed told her that if she needed to go to the washroom or her daughter at night, she could open her door whenever it was convenient. This important human need was ignored before and during those 4 days. If Rehana or her daughter wanted to go to the washroom, they were unable because they were locked up like dangerous wild animals. If a fire broke out, they would have been burned alive inside that dungeon with no windows. As icing on the cake, Rehana was told by the suddenly kind and generous woman that her daughter Ifat was going to be sent to an all-girls school. She would not need to worry about transportation because the girls' bus would come every day and take her daughter to school and bring her back. In addition to that, Ifat would not need to work anymore. She had to tend to her studies, and in her playtime, she needed to get some exercise and play with her dolls. In most Muslim countries, coeducational schools are unheard of. No mingling of boys or girls, even at the grade school level. Nonetheless, in some Muslim countries like Sudan and Egypt, Christians could attend private schools where boys and girls studied together. It was only after Sudan implemented Sharia law that those schools were shut down by the Ministry of Education and the Ministry of Religious Affairs. In the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, women are not allowed to drive cars. Only men are allowed to drive vehicles, and the driver of the girls' bus had to be a male 70 years of age or older. If the girls' bus broke down or was involved in an accident, the traffic police would close down all streets leading to the location. If any male dared defy the police and ventured into the cordoned-off area, he would be killed. The police would then phone the Ministry of Education and report the matter. The Ministry of Education would send another girls' bus with another old male driver. This might take hours. Nevertheless, the girls are to sit inside the bus and await the second bus to arrive. Then and only then, were the girls told to quickly board the new bus. The girls were covered from head to foot with black niqabs, which wrapped their bodies like onions. Even if you were to use long-range binoculars, you would not be able to see a finger or a toe of any one of them. Only until all those creatures were transferred in full secrecy from the first bus to the second bus and the second bus had left the restricted area, would the police open up the street to traffic again. I am not trying to belittle the Muslim women of this country by calling them creatures. In the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, the holy land of Muslims, no one refers to the woman by her name or gender. For example, no one would call a girl by her name like Fatima or by her gender. A woman or girl is not called she or a female. Every girl and every woman was called al-maklaka, which literally means the creature. It is in this spirit of things that you will find the windows of every girls' school bus adorned with black drapes. So, if the bus happened to pass you by, do not ever dream of catching a glimpse of what's inside. Even if one of the naughty girls happened to defy restrictions of total separation and privacy and rolled back one of the curtains or pulled them down, you would not be able to see anything except a spook covered from head to foot in a black coffin and a mysterious spirit of thick gloom.